Friday Night Funkin' just remastered the Slenderman mod, and of course Slenderman is a creepypasta character, not unlike Gold from Lost Silver, and of course the aggressive killer, Jeff the Killer. What's interesting about this mod is that we're not only going to get to see Slenderman, but also Sally Williams. And even though a lot of Slenderman's backstory is shrouded in mystery, we'll start with what we know. We do know that Slenderman is a supernatural creature who is known for roaming around the forest. Now, unlike Jeff the Killer though, he's not an aggressive killer. He's more passive aggressive, meaning that he may stalk his prey for 2, 3, maybe 10 years before he actually gets them. And I think the reason behind this is because he really likes to slowly torture his victims. And more in a psychological sense and not so much like physical torture. Now, the cool part about Slenderman is that when he finally does decide to catch you, he does, and he usually impales his victims onto a tree, and he basically just lets them leak out until they expire. And if that's not bad enough, after they expire, he takes out all their important body parts, he puts them in plastic bags, and then puts them back into the person. The only bright side of having Slenderman after you is that electronics usually pick up his signal or when he's around, so like cameras, televisions, radios will start to act up when he's in the location, meaning that at least people will have a chance to try to get away or they're at least aware of his presence. But it has to be known that Slenderman is definitely never been portrayed as a good person or a helper in any which way or form, so if he is near you, he's probably trying to make you go crazy or worse. Now, the woman that we see popping her head into the screen is actually Sally, or aka Sally Williams. Now, Sally Williams is from the creepypasta titled Play With Me, and it's actually a very dark backstory. It goes like this. Sally's story takes place back in the 70s, where she was basically a 12-year-old girl just enjoying her regular life. That is, until one day her Uncle Johnny comes to visit her and her family. And since Uncle Johnny is a scumbag, he gets the girl alone and he forces himself on her. Uncle Johnny tells her not to tell anybody about this, and for a little while, Sally's able to obey that command, but eventually it becomes too much for her to bear and she tries to tell her parents. Now, her parents are also scumbags and they tell her that it was probably just a nightmare and to just let it go. But Uncle Johnny hears her actually telling this to her parents, so he tells the parents that he's going to take Sally to the store, and instead of going to pick up groceries, he actually unalives his own niece. Sally basically becomes a vengeful spirit and she haunts the house and just the neighborhood in general in which she used to live. Now, this is where Slenderman comes into play though. Apparently, after she is unalive, she ends up meeting Slenderman, and while initially she is afraid of Slenderman, because you have to remember she's still a little girl even though she's a spirit, she realizes that Slenderman doesn't want to do her any harm and he actually wants to help her get revenge on Uncle Johnny. And because of Slenderman, Sally's able to find Uncle Johnny and unalive him, getting revenge for all the trauma that he put her through. Now, what I find even more sad about Sally is that even though she's a vengeful spirit, for the most part, she's pretty neutral around people, meaning that she doesn't just go out of her way to cause trouble. She obviously feels some type of way about adults, but especially children and just people who are passing by, she doesn't really go out of her way to make their lives miserable. If anything, she's more of like a trickster or a prankster, and it makes sense because, as I said, she's only 12 years old. Now, one more thing that I find interesting about the Slenderman and Sally relationship is that in some stories, it says that Slenderman actually adopts Sally. Now, this is interesting because in these stories, Sally is usually portrayed as being much more malicious and much more vicious, and it makes sense because, of course, she's attached to Slenderman now, who is absolutely a demon. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this video where I talk about all the canceled characters in a new Sonic mod, or check out this video where I talk about the Mistful Crimson Morning mod. Thanks for watching. Peace.